हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So today we'll be discussing from Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 verse number 31, and let me share my screen. Just give me 1 second. Are you all able to see my screen?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. स्वधर्मम् अपि चावेक्ष्य
स्वधर्ममपि चावेक्ष्य
न विकम्पितुम् अर्हसि,
न विकम्पितुमर्हसि,
धर्म्याद्धि युद्धात् श्रेयोऽन्यात्
धर्माद्धि युद्धात् श्रेयोऽन्यात्
क्षत्रियस्य न विद्यते।
क्षत्रियस्य न विद्यते।
स्वधर्मम् अपि चावेक्ष्य
स्वधर्ममपि चावेक्ष्य
न विकम्पितुम् अर्हसि,
न विकम्पितुमर्हसि,
धर्म्याद्धि युद्धात् श्रेयोऽन्यात्
धर्माद्धि युद्धात् श्रेयोऽन्यात्
क्षत्रियस्य न विद्यते।
क्षत्रियस्य न विद्यते।
स्वधर्मम् अपि चावेक्ष्य
स्वधर्ममपि चावेक्ष्य
न विकम्पितुम् अर्हसि,
न विकम्पितुमर्हसि,
धर्म्याद्धि युद्धात् श्रेयोऽन्यात्
धर्माद्धि युद्धात् श्रेयोऽन्यात्
क्षत्रियस्य न विद्यते।
क्षत्रियस्य न विद्यते।
स्वधर्ममपि चावेक्ष्य
स्वधर्ममपि चावेक्ष्य
न विकम्पितुमर्हसि,
न विकम्पितुमर्हसि,
धर्म्याधियुद्धात् श्रेयोऽन्यात्
धर्माद्धि युद्धात् श्रेयोऽन्यात्
क्षत्रियस्य न विद्यते।
क्षत्रियस्य न विद्यते। स्वधर्ममपि Go ahead.
स्वधर्ममपि चावेक्ष्य
स्वधर्ममपि चावेक्ष्य
न विकम्पितुमर्हसि,
न विकम्पितुमर्हसि,
धर्म्याधियुद्धात् श्रेयोऽन्यात्
धर्माद्धि युद्धात् श्रेयोऽन्यात्
क्षत्रियस्य न विद्यते।
क्षत्रियस्य न विद्यते। स्वधर्ममपि चावेक्ष्य स्वधर्ममपि चावेक्ष्य न विकम्पितुमर्हसि, न विकम्पितुमर्हसि, धर्माद्धि युद्धात् श्रेयोऽन्यात् धर्माद्धि युद्धात् श्रेयोऽन्यात् क्षत्रियस्य न विद्यते। क्षत्रियस्य न विद्यते। स्वधर्ममपि चावेक्ष्य न विकम्पितुमर्हसि, धर्माद्धि युद्धात् श्रेयोऽन्यात् धर्माद्धि युद्धात् श्रेयोऽन्यात् क्षत्रियस्य न विद्यते। क्षत्रियस्य न विद्यते।
स्वधर्ममपि चावेक्ष्य न विकम्पितुम् अर्हसि,
न विकम्पितुमर्हसि,
धर्म्याधियुद्धात् श्रेयोऽन्यात्
धर्माद्धि श्रेयोऽन्यात्
क्षत्रियस्य न विद्यते।
क्षत्रियस्य न विद्यते।
Synonyms: Swadharma,
स्वधर्म,
स्वधर्म
one's own religious principles.
One's
One's
own
own
religious
religious
principles.
Api,
Api,
also,
also,
cha,
cha,
indeed,
indeed,
apeksha,
Apeksha,
considering,
considering,
na,
na,
never,
never,
vikampitum,
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 to hesitate,
to
to
hesitate,
hesitate,
arhasi,
arhasi,
you deserve,
you
you
deserve,
deserve,
dharmyat,
dharmya,
dharmya,
for religious principles,
for
for
religious
religious principles.
he,
indeed,
He,
indeed,
indeed,
yudhat,
yuddha,
yuddhat,
than fighting,
than
then
fighting,
fighting,
shreyah,
shreya,
better engagement,
better
better
engagement,
anyat,
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 any other,
any
any
other,
other,
kshatriyasya,
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 of the kshatriya,
of the
of the
kshatriya,
kshatriya,
na,
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 does not,
does
does
not,
not,
vidyate,
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 exist.
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 Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
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 Considering your specific duty as Kshatriya, you should know that there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles, and so there is no need for hesitation. Purport. Out of the 4 orders of social administration, the second order, for the matter of good administration, is called Kshatriya. Shat means hurt. One who gives protection from harm is called Kshatriya. Trayate means to give protection. The Kshatriyas are trained for killing in the forest. A Kshatriya would go into the forest and challenge a tiger face to face and fight with the tiger with his sword. When the tiger was killed, it would be offered the royal order of cremation. This system has been followed even up to the present day by the Kshatriya kings of Jaipur state. The Kshatriyas are specially trained for challenging and killing because religious violence is sometimes a necessary factor. Therefore, Kshatriyas are never meant for accepting directly the order of sannyas or renunciation. Non-violence in politics may be diplomacy, but it is never a factor or principle. In the religious law books, it is stated, Ahaveshu mitonyam jigham santo mahichitah yuddhamana param saktya swargam yanti aparan mukha yaggeshu pashavo brahman anyate sattam dvijay sankruta kila mantrescha tepi swargam avapnuvan. In the battlefield, a king or kshatriya, while fighting another king envious of him, is eligible for achieving the heavenly planets after death, as the Brahmanas also attain the heavenly planets by sacrificing animals in the sacrificial fire. Therefore, killing on the battlefield on religious principles and killing animals in the sacrificial fire are not at all considered to be acts of violence, because everyone is benefited by the religious principles involved. The animal sacrificed gets a human life immediately without undergoing the gradual evolutionary process from one form to another. And the Kshatriyas killed on the battlefield also attain the heavenly planets, as do the Brahmanas who attain them by offering sacrifice. There are 2 kinds of swadharmas, specific duties. As long as one is not liberated, one has to perform the duties of his particular body in accordance with religious principles in order to achieve liberation. When one is liberated, one's swadharma, specific duty, becomes spiritual and is not in the material bodily concept. In the bodily conception of life, there are specific duties for the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, respectively, and such duties are unavoidable. Swadharma is ordained by the Lord, and this will be clarified in the 4th chapter. On the bodily plane, Swadharma is called Varnashram Dharma, or man's stepping stone for spiritual understanding. Human civilization begins from the stage of Varnashram Dharma, or specific duties, in terms of the specific modes of nature of the body obtained. Discharging one's specific duty in any field of action in accordance with the orders of higher authorities serves to elevate one to a higher status of life. नमः विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी के नामने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्येष्टारिणे. Translation once again. Considering your specific duty as Kshatriya, you should know that there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles, and so there is no need for hesitation. Okay, so here in this verse, Krishna is pointing to the fact because Arjuna is a Kshatriya, right? And as Prabhupada explains the meaning of the word Kshatriya itself, right? Shat means hurt and Trayate means to give protection. So Kshatriyas are the administrative class according to the Varna Ashram system, right? There are 4 Varnas and 4 Ashramas, right? So Kshatriyas, they are the second Varna. So the first one is Brahmin, then Kshatriya is the second, Vaishya and Shudra. These are the 4 Varnas basically. And then Ashramas, there are 4 Ashramas, Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyas. So because Arjuna, he belonged to the Kshatriya class of men, Krishna is basically recommending that because you're a Kshatriya, it is your duty bound to protect the religious principles. Therefore, there is no reason for you not to fight this war, because the whole purpose of this war is to save the religious principles. And here Prabhupada very nicely explains that Swadharma or specific duties, right, there are of 2 types. One is when a person is on the bodily platform, right, and pretty much, a huge majority of people in this world belong to that category where, our understanding is that we are the body and not the soul, right? So we live in that bodily concept of life. And for people who are still in the bodily concept of life, which is the majority of the people, only a very handful are actually liberated who understand that I'm not this body, but I'm beyond this, right? Brahman, that understanding. But till the point we have that, we have to perform duties in accordance with the religious principles, right? The Varnashram Dharma. And Prabhupada is also pointing to the fact that, Krishna in chapter 4 will actually explain that he is actually the creator of this Varnashram Dharma, right? And in actually chapter number 4, verse number 13, Krishna says, Chatur Varnam Maya Shashtam Guna Karma Vibhagasha. Right? So Krishna basically says that I am the creator of the 4 kind of Varnas, Chatur Varnam Maya Shashtam Guna Karma Vibhagasha. So based on a certain propensity of a living entity, right? Guna, and his activities, he has to take up some specific duties, right? So that's how these 4 broad categorizations of work have been defined by Krishna. Brahmin, who are the scholarly class, more intelligent class, they are supposed to teach the general masses the religious principles. Kshatriyas, they are the administrative class, right? And their propensity is actually to fight, right? So because they already have that propensity, they have to engage in fighting. It is better to engage in fighting while protecting the religious principles, right? When Shudras, they try to destroy the religious principles because they are not intelligent. Kshatriyas, they provide protection to Brahmanas and to the general population so that those religious principles could be protected, and Brahmanas can nicely basically disseminate the higher truth, right? The spiritual science. They can teach general population the spiritual science, right? So there is a very nice system that Krishna has established, right? And then similarly, Vaishyas, because we are in this material world, right? We have to survive, we have to eat, right? So they are engaged in, agricultural duties, day-to-day maintenance of the world, basically, right? So they are basically managing that part, that, providing food, providing all of the material needs of life to sustain the body. And then Shudras, they are the less intelligent class of men. And for them, there is a certain type of work, primarily laborers, right? That's what is prescribed for them. So no matter what level of intelligence one has, what kind of propensities one has. He can pick from any of those four. It would fall in one of these four varnas. And as Krishna says, he is the creator of these varna. But although he is the creator, he says, I am beyond it. Right? Tasya kartaram apimam vidhi akartaram avyayam. Right? That although I am the creator of these varnas, but you must know factually that vidhi akartaram avyayam, that I am actually beyond these four modes. Right? So just like Krishna, because he is the supreme soul, right? He is the creator of everything. He never comes under the influence of Maya or the material energy of the Lord. He is in fact the presiding deity under whose supervision the material energy is managing this entire creation, right? So he never is influenced by these, he does not come under the purview of these four varnas. Similarly, a person who has, just like Prabhupada is talking here, right? There are two different kind of people. One who are on the bodily platform, and the second class is the people who are liberated. So people who are already liberated, for them, they are actually beyond it, right? So for them, the idea of following the varna does not really relate, because they are not on the bodily platform anymore, right? They have transcended that, right? So we have to understand that this facility of these varnas, what's the reason that it has been provided? And it is very important for us to take it seriously, because as I said, a large majority of us are still in the bodily concept of life, even though we may have heard a lot what Krishna is teaching in Bhagavad Gita, and we are following our religious principles and doing spiritual practice, right? But still, there is a lot that we need to do in order to realize the fact that we are not this body, but we are beyond it, right? So till the point we are there, it is important for us, and this facility has been provided by Krishna himself, that if we basically work according to the propensities, right, guna, the kind of guna that we have, if we work according to that, then gradually we can be elevated to the higher platform of understanding, right? We can gradually be elevated. So that facility has been provided to us. Just like, when a person, he goes into the prison house, right? He just cannot sit idle there. If he sits idle, he will in fact become more destructive. So in a correctional facility, there are various kinds of works that are prescribed, right? So that person can engage himself in that work, right? But, if he gets engaged to an extent that he does not want to come out of the prison house, that would be a mistake, right? So although I'm engaged in some kind of work in the prison house, but the whole point of engaging in that work in the prison house is so that I can be engaged in something constructive. But if the thought of coming out of the prison house and the realization that I'm in fact, in the prison house, there is a much better world outside. If that realization does not sink in, right? If gradually by engaging that work, I'm getting more and more attached to the prison house, that won't be a very good thing, right? So that is the difference. That's what we need to understand. Although we need to engage in the work, but the way we need to engage is without attachment. We have to make sure, right? So there are three different kinds of actions. One is called karma, the other one is called vikarma, and the third one is called akarma, right? So karma basically means that you follow all of the rules and regulations, the Vedic scriptures, the way Vedas define the karma kanda, basically you follow that, and the objective for that, all of those activities is actually to escalate oneself in the cycle of karma, right? So gradually one can elevate himself to a better, more mature materialistic life, right? So from the earthly planets, he could potentially be elevated to the heavenly planets, right? So that is the motivation of people who are engaged in their prescribed duties, but the objective is to enjoy the fruits of those actions. So that's called karma. The other one is called vikarma. Vikarma essentially means that you do not really care about the Vedic scriptures, what the Vedas are prescribing. You actually, in fact, do things opposite to that. So you have is sense enjoyment, sense gratification. You do not care about the rules and regulations. So the fate of such a person is not very good, because he will gradually be degraded to the lower species of life, right? And it will take him a lot of time again to come to this human form of life, wherein he has the advantage of getting out of the circle of birth and death, right? So that's a very, very bad situation to be in. That's called vikarma. And the third one is called akarma. So that means that although you are engaged in your prescribed duties, but you do not really care for the fruits of those material activities that you're doing, right? So you're not attached to the fruits, you're simply performing your action. So that's called akarma. So that is what is recommended. But one thing is for sure, that as long as we are in this bodily concept of life, we have to perform action, right? Niyatam kuru karma tvam karma jayo hi akarmana. Sharir yatra pichatena prasiddhyet akarmana, Krishna says. Right? So niyatam kuru karma tvam. Niyatam means according to one's propensities. Niyatam kuru karma tvam karma jayo hi akarmana, he's saying. So to perform action is definitely superior than getting attached to inaction, than not doing anything. Karma jayo hi akarmana. Sharir yatra pichatena. So even the maintenance of the body, right? For one to be able to maintain this body, the body that has been given to us. Right? Sharir yatra pichatena prasiddhyet akarmana. One cannot even maintain that. What to speak about anything else? What to speak about spiritual realization? If you cannot even maintain your body, this is the primary instrument that we have to receive knowledge, right? Even if it is spiritual knowledge, we need our mental faculties to work properly for us to be able to practice Krishna consciousness, right? Excuse me. So even for that purpose, we need to be engaged in our prescribed duties, and that Krishna himself is suggesting, right? But then he adds immediately in the next verse, he's adding yagnartat karmano annatra lokoyam karma bandhana, right? Yagnartat, you have to work, you have to be engaged in your prescribed duties, but how? It should be as a yagya. Yagnartat karmano annatra lokoyam karma bandhana, right? If you do not do your activities as if you are performing a sacrifice, that will cause attachment or bondage to this material world. Yagnarthat karmano annatra lokoyam karma bandhana, basically he's saying. Tad artham karam kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. Right? But if you perform your prescribed duties thinking of it as a yagya, right, then that has the potential to cut down those shackles, the bondage that you have to the cycle of birth and death, that those shackles basically be cut and you will be free of it, right? Tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. Samachara means completely. Mukta means freedom. Sangha means the cycle of birth and death. Basically, if you perform karma as a yagya, if you perform your prescribed duties as a yagya, then you can be freed from the cycle of birth and death. Whereas if you perform your prescribed duties thinking about the fruits of your actions, then those will result in binding you to this material world, right? So it's very important for us to understand. Now the key word here is yagya, right? What's the meaning of yagya? So there also Krishna explains, Bhoktaram yagya tapasam sarva loko maheshwaram suhridam sarva bhutanam yatva mam shantiricchati, Krishna says, right? So Bhoktaram yagya tapasam, all of the yagyas that is done by anyone, I am the ultimate beneficiary of it. Bhoktaram yagya tapasam, all of the yagyas, and tapas means austerities, right? So all of the sacrifices and austerities which anyone performs, Bhoktaram yagya tapasam sarva loka maheshwaram, because I am the proprietor of the entire creation. Every austerity and sacrifice that is performed, I am the ultimate beneficiary, right? So if you just reverse this logic, so essentially what Krishna is saying, that anyone who does anything, any sacrifice, I am the ultimate beneficiary, right? If you turn it around, it basically means that anything that we do for the benefit of the Supreme Lord, right? Anything that we do for the benefit or for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, that is yagya, right? So anything where we put Krishna as the priority, where we want to do anything for Krishna, that is essentially yagya, right? So yagya basically means that. A yagya means an action performed for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. So if we do our prescribed duties with the objective of satisfying the Supreme Lord, that action eventually results in us freeing up from the bondage, from the material bondage, right? So artificial suppression of senses does not help. We have to engage our senses, and that is the whole objective of creating the Varnashram system. What was the reason? I mean, someone could ask this question, that what was the reason for Krishna to create Varnashram system, right? What was the need of it? If it can potentially cause people to be more attached to the material world, right? As we understand, Krishna, he is the ultimate beneficiary of us all, as we just heard from that verse, right? Bhoktaram yagatapsam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam yatva mam shantirichyati. So suhridam sarvabhutanam means I am the ultimate well-wisher of all living entities. Suhrid. Suhrid means ultimate well-wisher, right? So Krishna, he is the ultimate well-wisher of all living entities. Suhridam sarvabhutanam, right? So if he is the ultimate well-wisher, why did he create something that can potentially cause bondage to the material world, right? So that we can understand, because we have those propensities, right? Because we want to enjoy the material world, we have certain propensities. Those propensities need to be engaged somewhere, right? So where do we engage them? So the whole objective of karma is simply for us to be able to release our propensities somewhere. Just like a Kshatriya, he has a propensity to fight. If he has to fight, somehow or the other, he will find an opportunity to fight. Instead of that, it is better that he fights to protect the religious principles, right? So there are people who are trying to preach the religious principle to general masses. And there are also people whose intelligence is degraded. They do not like people who are trying to preach the religious principles, right? So they will go out and they will try to kill them, right? So if I have a fighting propensity, it is better that I fight while protecting those Brahmanas who are trying to propagate the higher science. And that way I can contribute in a positive way, right? So Krishna very intelligently, right? Because he is the most intelligent. He has found out this self-sustainable system called Varnashram. That way what happens is we can engage our propensities in a constructive way. But at the same time, we have to make sure the way we engage in our prescribed duties should be such that it does not bind us to the material world, right? The example that I gave about a prison, right? If we engage, there are all kinds of activities that have been provided to the prisoners, right? But if they get so attached that the time of release comes and they say, I don't want to go out, I'm just fine here. That would be foolishness, because there are a lot more opportunities outside, and prison house is just a correctional facility, right? You are actually suffering. So we have to understand that this material world and the prescribed duties here, they have a very limited objective, a very limited purpose. The entire objective is for us to be able to vent out our propensities, the propensities that we have, because we understand ourselves on the bodily platform, right? Once we understand that we are not the body, but we are the soul, we are Brahman, then we automatically would get detached to those propensities, right? So at that point, those things don't really apply to us. But till the time we attain that platform of the liberated stage, we have to engage in the prescribed duties. And therefore, Krishna is suggesting Arjuna that you have to fight for protecting the religious principles because you are a Kshatriya, right? But how do you have to engage? That is important. That Krishna is explaining at other places, that we have to engage for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. And actually that's what Arjuna eventually does, right? He engages in the fight for satisfaction of Krishna, because this was all Krishna's plan. And by satisfying Krishna, he is basically performing a yajna, although he seems to be fighting a war, but in reality, he is performing a sacrifice, a yajna, right? So that is what is recommended for the devotees too, right? For devotees, that is a devotional service is basically falls in the category of a karma, right? Devotional service, when we perform every action, everything that we do for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord with that objective, then we do not accrue any fruitive results, right? Any kind of anything that will cause bondage to this material world, right? So we get freed up from that by working for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. And that is the ideal way of performing our prescribed duties, right? And devotional service is so nice, Raj Vidya Raj Guhyam, परम राजविद्या राजगुह्यम पवित्रम इदम उत्तमम प्रत्यक्ष अवगमम धर्मम सुसुखम कर्तुम अव्ययम. Right? Krishna says सुसुखम कर्तुम. It is very joyfully performed. Right? Devotional service is so beautiful that it is joyfully performed, and there are so many activities and actions. Pretty much everything, every kind of propensity that we have could be engaged in the service of the Supreme. And Prabhupada was an expert at that, right? He is so nicely engaged so many devotees with different skill sets. And today, when Prabhupada, he was there, there were people who used to like to sing, right? So they had ample opportunities to practice their propensity to sing. Some like to play musical instruments, so they were given that opportunity. Some like to paint, they did that. Even for Kshatriyas, right? For the administrative class, there is a lot of administration that is required within the Krishna conscious movement, right? And there are all the time people trying to attack Krishna conscious, devotees. So there, they try to blaspheme the devotees of the Supreme Lord. So there we can practice that propensity to fight, right? There we can vent it out. And of course, all of the qualification for a Brahmin, right? Our whole business is to reach the spiritual science, right? So that is ongoing, right? And then there are some menial jobs as well that we have to do from time to time. But all of that, the objective is to serve Krishna, right? So we can engage in a very constructive way. And Prabhupada was an expert at that. And not just that, the way we engage in our day-to-day activities. If we keep Krishna at the center, right? Whatever engagements we may have as grihastas, we are engaged in our day-to-day jobs, for example, right? But if we perform those jobs with the objective that this is a service to Krishna, because eventually you need to work, and the money that you get out of it, you donate a portion of that money in the service of Krishna, to make the movement, in the preaching activities. If you engage, some of the wealth that you create from your day-to-day activities, that is one way to engage, right? But also a general understanding that, you need to perform the job so that you can maintain your body, and you can also maintain your family, because they are your responsibilities, and Krishna has provided them those responsibilities. So somehow or the other, we have to kind of program ourselves to understand that the job performance, the duties that we are doing, the day-to-day activities that we are doing, so that we can be Krishna conscious all the time, right? So that is the ideal way for us to be engaged in our prescribed duties. And once we find that mood set, we can be basically 24/7 Krishna conscious, right? Because this is something that Krishna emphasizes a lot of places. Satatam kirtayanto mam, for example. So this word satat, right, has been used quite a few times by Krishna throughout Bhagavad Gita, right? A constant engagement in Krishna consciousness is needed for us to attain perfection, right? So how would this constant engagement come? After all, we cannot chant 24 hours a day, right? We don't have that level of spiritual maturity. We have been prescribed a certain, a set of rules and regulations, right? We have to chant 16 rounds a day. We have to listen to, read scriptures. We have to listen to saintly people, our acharyas, right? But we also have to go out and work, right? So sometimes it feels a little difficult to understand that what's the meaning of Satatam Kirtayanto Mam, that we have to be engaged in Krishna Kirtan all the time, 24/7. How is it possible practically, right? So this is the answer. This is practical only when we align our day-to-day jobs in such a way that we can stay Krishna consciousness even while we are performing our jobs, right? We have to develop that kind of an understanding that this activities or the day-to-day jobs that we are doing, that is eventually for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, right? Just like when we sleep, right? At the time of sleeping, if we think that, the sleep is essential so that we can maintain the health, because eventually this body is an important instrument through which we are practicing Krishna consciousness, right? So for the well-being of the body, so that this body can be engaged in the service of the Lord, this sleep is important. So if we do that with that spirit, then the action of sleep itself will become an act of devotional service, right? So that is the idea. We have to do the same things. We are not doing anything different, right? A person who is not associated with ISKCON or who is not performing Krishna consciousness, performing activities in the Krishna consciousness mood, is also sleeping, and devotees also sleep. But the mood that we have to accept that action to sleep, that makes the entire difference, right? Because that is what is impacting our consciousness. We are thinking that we are sleeping so that we can maintain this body, and eventually we can serve Krishna better if we take some rest, right? So by that, the sleeping activity itself becomes a sacrifice, because that we are doing for the pleasure of the Lord, right? So that we can upkeep our body, and then that body can be engaged in the service of the Lord. So that act of sleep itself becomes a sacrifice. And similarly, with that mindset, if we also work, that is the way through which we can become Krishna conscious 24/7. And that would then satisfy the criteria. Satatam kirtayantu mam. Ye jana pariyupasate. Tesham nityabhyukta nam yogashevam mahamiyam, he says, right? And for such people, what does Krishna do? He takes care of whatever they lack and he preserves whatever they have, right? So people who are constantly engaged in this way, in the service of the Supreme Lord, Krishna personally takes care of all of their needs. They do not really have to worry about anything. They become free of all of the anxieties and all of the fears. And eventually, Krishna actually himself gives himself to the devotees. He goes to that extent. Just like we saw in the case of Sudama, right? There is a story of Sudama Brahmin in Srimad Bhagavatam. He was a very, very poor Brahmin, and he and Krishna, they spent time together in Sandipani Muni's ashram as students. So there is a pastime that once they were sent by the Guru Mata into the forest to pick some woods, and while they were out, suddenly the rain came and it was a heavy downpour. They had to take shelter on a tree, and the rain wouldn't stop, so they had to basically sleep throughout the night into that forest, right? And it was dinner time, and it was pouring really hard, and they were hungry, and Guru Mata had given some grains, right? Cooked chipped rice, I believe it was chipped rice, and Guru Mata gave it to Sudama that both of you can share when you feel hungry. So Sudama Brahmin, he was so hungry that he ate everything actually. And when Krishna asked him, "Do you have those chipped rice with you?" He said, "No, actually, all of those are gone. They got wet and we don't have that anymore." So he did that. So eventually, what happened after that? This incident, Krishna, of course, he became the king of Dwarka, right? He's a supreme person. Sudama, he was leading a very poverty-stricken life, but his consciousness was very pure. He was a Brahmin. So his wife actually was not very happy, and she insisted that your friend Krishna, he's known as the richest king. He's the king of Dwarka. He's such a big person. Why don't you go and ask for help if he's such a close friend of yours? And Sudama was reluctant to do it, but when his wife pushed a little bit, he eventually agreed to it. So, and when you visit a friend, of course, it makes sense. It's just a social norm that you carry some gift when you meet your friend after a long time. So he was thinking, I don't have anything. I'm so poor. What will I take? So somehow his wife, she begged in the neighborhood and found a handful of chipped rice, and Sudama Brahmin took that and he went to Dwarka. And when he finally meets Krishna, Krishna accepts him very nicely because he's the Supreme Lord. He has all the gunas, including the humility. He's also the most humble of all, right? He can also be the most arrogant, as we see in the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When he was Nimai Pandit, he used to show off his, literary supremacy. He was a very scholarly Brahmin. He was expert at mundane education. So he used to show it off. Even to Vaishnavas, he would hold them down and he would make sure that he defeats them in the argument, right? So he displayed some level of arrogance. So he could, if he wants, he can be the most arrogant, but if he wants, he could be the most humble. And he displayed his humility in his dealings with Sudama Brahmin. So he received him so nicely, and he in fact washed his feet. And he then asked him, what have you got from me, for me? So Sudama was a little hesitant to give, but eventually Krishna finds out, and he sees there are a little bit of, some amount of rice. And he basically eats those rice. He eats the first the second and the third time he is about to eat the whole thing, Rukmini Devi, she stops Krishna, saying that, you've already given him everything. Now, in this third morsel, you are actually going to give yourself to him. So what will happen to us if you give yourself to him? So Krishna, he's so kind that he eventually even gives himself to the devotees, right, who are completely surrendered unto him. There cannot be anyone more kind than Krishna, right? So such is his personality. So although he is the Supreme Lord, but he's perfect in every sense, right? So when we engage in his devotional service, that is our true constitutional position, right? And one way to do that is when we when we perform our prescribed duties in a mood that all of the things, everything, all of the prescribed duties that we are doing are actually for the service of the Supreme Lord. And when we think that way and we engage ourselves in the service of the Supreme Lord through our day-to-day activities, basically everything that we do, if we simply think that everything that we are doing is for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, and it comes with practice, right? When we practice this mood, eventually we can attain that stage. Of course, it is easier said than done. It will take time, but as Krishna says, abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihate, right? By practice, it is possible. So if we are diligent and if we practice, eventually after some time, if we follow the regulative principles, if we are doing everything, and we are constantly trying to develop this mood that everything belongs to Krishna, even my family, my wife, my son, everything that I have, everything belongs to Krishna, and we offer everything to Krishna before consuming it on our own. We accept everything as Krishna Prasad, basically. And even our jobs and the salary that we make from our jobs, if we give a share for Krishna consciousness, to spread Krishna consciousness movement, that also becomes prasad, and that is in fact prescribed for grihasthas, right? So if we do everything for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord this way, by offering everything for the pleasure of the Lord, that comes under the category of yajna, right? So then we are following this idea of performing prescribed duties as a yajna for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. And that way we can also satisfy the criteria of satatam kirtayantu mam, right? That way we can be 24/7 Krishna conscious all the time. And when that happens, eventually, Krishna takes care of all of our needs and necessities of life. We don't have to worry about it. Eventually we get totally free from all kinds of anxiety and fears. And eventually we can understand and realize that we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and our constitutional position is to serve Krishna, right? That is our constitutional position, and that is what we need to be happy. And that realization, Krishna makes sure that we get through his mercy. He gives that kind of a knowledge that this absolute truth sinks within our consciousness. And at that time, we can be totally free from this mundane world and be fully engaged in the loving service of the Supreme Lord in Golok Vrindavan Dham, in his supreme abode. And that is the perfection of life. And the whole goal of life is simply this, right? So by engaging ourselves in the service of the Supreme Lord, we can attain perfection. So with that, I will stop. 7:46. If anyone has any questions or realizations.
I have a question.
Yes.
I have two questions.
Sure.
The question is, you're explaining that I should engage my propensities, I should engage according to my propensities. So let's say I have the propensity of a Kshatriya. So it's an army. So now, how can I think I'm doing this to please Krishna when I'm being sent to kill innocent people in Vietnam or in Afghanistan? So I'm engaging my propensities, but it's not according to religious principles at all. So what do I do?
Yep, that's a very good point, Prabhuji. Right. So we have to understand that we are not the supreme controllers, although we have been provided some amount of control, but that control is very, very limited, right? Not everything that we do or, the situations that we are put in, they are not in our control. Eventually, Krishna is the ultimate controller. And many times it could happen that we are in a situation which is not very congenial for us to practice Krishna consciousness, right? The example that you gave, sometimes you could be put into the military, and the military commanders are not very good people, and they may command you to kill innocent people, right? But that is something that is beyond your control. The best bet at that point is simply to pray Krishna, that, oh Krishna, I'm trying to serve you, but I am put into this unfortunate situation. Please help me in this situation. Please take me out from here. And I've heard from many devotees, and that is my personal experience as well. Krishna eventually helps. If we are sincere, if our prayers are sincere, and if we are sincere towards this idea, Krishna helps. And, I have heard there are innumerable examples and stories, and my personal experience as well, that Krishna takes care and eventually people come out of it. But in that limited amount of time, of course, you have to follow the orders of the supreme commanders to the best of your capacity, whatever you could do to be on the righteous path, to follow the righteousness. You should stick to the best that you can do. But ultimately, we have to understand that not everything is in our control, because we are not the supreme controllers. So this is basically to the best of our abilities. We should try to put one story that comes to my mind was, there is a story of a butcher. Actually, there is a pastime when there is a butcher, and I don't remember the exact details, but the ultimate outcome was, I think it was Narad Muni who asked Krishna, that there is this butcher and he is always thinking about you, but he's engaged in animal killing. And there is this Brahmana who is a scholar, Sanskrit scholar. So who do you think will attain you in this lifetime? And Krishna says, actually, it's not the Brahmana, but it's the butcher. Because although the butcher is engaged in animal killing, but he is always thinking about me. But because he has to earn his livelihood, he is engaged in this manner. But he's constantly engaged in my thought. Whereas this Brahmana, his whole objective is simply to be more famous and attain more name and fame. He has not really internalized all the teachings that are in the Vedas, right? So Krishna understands that because he's the supreme controller. He understands our heart, and he understands that we have limited capacity as living entities, minute parts and parcels of Krishna. So he understands that.
There's a nice story in the CC that illustrates the point, a very nice point you made about, well, if it's beyond our control, we should just pray to Krishna. Because Vallabha Bhatta tried to explain his commentary on the Bhagavatam, and Lord Chaitanya, nobody wanted to hear it, but he heard Gadadhar, and he forced him. And so Gadadhar simply prayed in his mind, then nothing I can do, please, So that's a very wonderful point you made. May I ask my second question?
Yes, Prabhuji, please.
So it's a different topic now. So Krishna has just finished explaining, you're not this body, the body doesn't die, you're not this body. Then all of a sudden he descends to a lower standard, starting to talk about, why?
Yes, that's a very good point. And actually, Prabhuji, we find this throughout Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is kind of going back and forth. And it's like, if you are talking to me, right, you are trying to convince me about a certain point, and you and I are face to face, right? So you can actually read my expressions to see if whatever you are telling me, whether I'm able to understand that, right? So as Krishna is explaining Arjuna face to face, and he starts to talk about soul, body, and he thinks that, okay, he is not getting it. It's better that let me first of all start from that. If he's a body and he has certain propensities, how can he engage his propensity in the most constructive way? He first of all tries to tell him about soul and the body, the difference. But Arjuna isn't really convinced, right? So that's how we see throughout Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is talking a lot of things, right? But eventually, where does it end? In chapter 18, the discussion finally concludes when Krishna says, Sarv dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. He basically says, you forget whatever I told you. You forget all the rules, regulations, sarv dharman parityajya. You give up everything, just surrender unto me. Sarv dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. Aham tvam sarv papebhyo mokshishami ma sucha. Right? I will take care of all of the sinful activities that you have incurred till now and whatever you might incur going forward. Right? Don't worry about it. Sarv dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. Aham tvam sarv papebhyo mokshishami ma sucha. Don't worry. I will take care of it. And at that point, Arjuna gets convinced. And as soon as he gets convinced, that's where it ends, basically, right? So ultimately, that is the promise that convinces a devotee, that we have to surrender everything to Krishna. We don't have to worry about these nitty-gritties of what is karma, what is vikarma, what is akarma. But of course, different people are different. Everyone is different. People can understand things in different ways. So Krishna, Bhagavad Gita, this is a leela between Arjuna and Krishna. Of course, both of Arjuna is Nitya Siddha and Krishna is the Supreme Person. But he has gone through all of these topics, nitty-gritties, because all of us living entities understand the same thing in different ways, and there are different facilities that Krishna has provided to eventually reach him, right? So that's what is happening there.
That's a very nice point. That Krishna, even if Arjuna is understanding, Krishna wants to pull everybody in.
Right.
Another point I understood was, if you look at Arjuna's original arguments, one of them is, I don't want to commit a sinful activity. Here, Krishna is explaining, actually, it would be sinful if you don't work according to your varnashram. So he's defeating that argument also.
Exactly. Very nicely said, Prabhuji. True. Thank you so much for those questions. And I think that was very nice.
It's only your good association that I was able to ask any good questions. It's all credit.
That's your humility. Thank you so much.
I don't know what that word you said starts with H. I don't know what humility. I don't know what that means.
Anyone else has any questions or comments? Okay, so I guess not. In that case, we are at 7:55, so we can.
I have quick quiz, Prabhu. Can I?
Yes, yes, Prabhu.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a quiz.
Okay, just sharing. Okay, here we go. It is a short quiz. We have just 3 questions. Okay, so I think we can, yeah, almost everyone is answered. Okay, I can end now. Very good result. What does Khet means in the word Kshatriya? So Prabhupada says it's okay. Khet means hurt in the purport, and we discussed this today. And which of the following is not acts of violence? So the second and third answer is correct. Kshatriyas fighting on religious principle is not a violence, and sacrificial animal killing by Brahmanas, this is also not a violence. And the last question is material swadharma is also known as, answer is Varnasrama dharma. That's what today's quiz. Thank you everyone for participating in the quiz. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, the devotees. So we'll pay obeisances to all of the devotees. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha
अनंत कोटि वैष्णव अभिराम प्रभु की जय.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.